So, and we should be on slide 5 now. And so here, more of types of services and contracts that we deal with. Just kind of runs what you would expect for any large organization and things that they need to do with environmental response for cleanups and large construction, as well as smaller projects for new construction as well. And then also, you know, as the previous slide, our maintenance of existing facilities. For construction right now, what we do is we primarily procure those large-scale construction projects through an announcement in FedBizOpps and do a public bid opening for the larger construction projects. In previous years, we had what was called a MATOC, where we awarded about 35 different contracts to contractors throughout the state. And then anytime we had a construction project, we would go to that pool of contractors and we could issue, as the name implies, multiple contracts over a 5-year span to those contractors. We're in the process of identifying and allocating resources to award a new MATOC this year. And again, that will be both at the preliminary stage and when it actually goes out for solicitation, that will be on FBO as well.
Is that going out as a small business set aside?
At this point, I can't speak to what the set aside will be because we're still just in the very preliminary stage.
That's exciting though.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. And lastly on this slide are A&E services. So those are architect and engineering. Those are a special case. Right now, NGB has mandated that we use a national IDIQ, which operates very similar to a MATOC. You have multiple contract holders, and then you get the task orders issued to them right now. So this is also expiring, and when that happens, NGB will either reissue an IDIQ or we'll start doing localized IDIQs for architect and engineering firms here, as either in a regional or a statewide basis. So next slide, please.
All right, you're good.
Okay. So here's some more types of services then that we primarily do. We have a lot of medical records, case management, behavioral health contracts, as well as family programs, events for children of military families, and we have a lot of food needs on the Army side for both a regular recurring basis for IDT weekends or for annual training. So catering is a big place that we spend a lot of money. And then also one of the other ways that we purchase things is through the AbilityOne program. So another thing that I've seen on this slide in recent years has been the need for IT services and support and supplies, as well as a lot of small business companies coming up and wanting to procure and work in the IT field. And right now, the National Guard, as it works, purchases their IT services, support, supplies through existing contracts that have been awarded at the national level. So the Army is required to use CHEST, the Air is required to use Halfway, and we're mandated to use all of those systems for purchasing our IT products and support.
Can you talk about what CHESS is? That's like a large IDIQ. Well, it's a contracting vehicle, right?
Correct. And CHESS is actually, I think at this point it's up to around 6 different contracts. You have large IDIQs for hardware, large IDIQs for services and support, and really runs the gamut of all things IT related that the Army needs. And so, for instance, when we buy actual laptop machines. You know, the larger players are on there like Dell and CDW, and those notebook computers are already negotiated at a pre-configured price for the Army, where you can literally just pick right off the shelf one computer that meets the military's security requirements. Because really that was the overarching theme behind going that route, is to ensure standardization and that all of the IT hardware and services meet military requirements.
But small businesses can apply to become a chess contract holder, correct? So that would be a separate process.
Correct. And so that would be managed at a higher level when those requests go out. Small businesses can and do get on that IDIQ contract as well. And then in my office, then that's helpful because the government can set things aside for small businesses on chess, and that's been just in the last few years, because we've really struggled with having a need for IT products and support being mandated to use chess, but then not having an available pool of small businesses who are eligible to provide those to us. So yes, that is an area that we do struggle with, and it's difficult for us to meet our small business numbers just by virtue of the fact that some of these things are not provided by small businesses.
And Air Force Way or Air Force Way, that's also a contract vehicle?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And more agencies than just the National Guard use it. Is that correct, or do you know?
Yes, no, that's correct. It's the Ohio National Guard and Air National Guard, and then every single National Guard in the 54 as well.
Okay.
And then also DoD Army as a whole goes through chess as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly, our supplies that we purchased, again, primarily we buy things through a supply system, either through DLA or some of our other larger vehicles like GSA Advantage out there. But again, there is a routine need for things that are outside of those systems, either because the system cannot support us or the system can't get it to us quickly enough, or we need something that doesn't meet the same requirements as the item offered for one of those systems. Excuse me. So while we are mandated to use those vehicles, there is still quite a bit of open market, what we call open market activity, where we solicit directly to small businesses. Can I have slide 7, please? So
right.
what this slide has on here is just some of these thresholds where we
Hang
purchase.
on just a second. Our system locked on slide 6.
Okay.
I'll let you know when it's back up.
Okay.
All right, you're good.
Okay. So what this slide focuses on are dollar values and thresholds of things where we're mandated to use. So the federal contracting field is heavily regulated by various publications, either the Federal Acquisition Regulations or the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulations. And what those regulations do is set thresholds of how things can be purchased. And so on this slide, you have supplies under $10,000 can be purchased with a credit card. Same thing with services under 25 and construction over 2,000. Anything over those amounts will be on a traditional paper contract. The $10,000 to $15,000 area is where, if you're in the 10,000 to 15 for supplies, what we can do then is just solicit directly to small businesses to see if they can provide what we need. That generally from 10 to 15, you will not see a posting on beta.sam. Likewise, if it's under $10,000 for supplies, you won't see a posting because it'll just be purchased directly on the GPC. Anything over that $15,000 though is where you will see us put a solicitation out on the beta.sam now, which is the new website, or we will just go to one of our existing sources, GSA eBuy, and do a direct request for quotations right on there. So then that also would be limited to the businesses that are already awarded an IDIQ contract in GSA as well. And GSA is a large organization where businesses are pre-awarded a contract and we can order directly from them. So where you would not see a solicitation is some of the socioeconomic statuses that the SBA awards to different firms. And then if we have a pre-existing contract like an IDIQ or a MATOC, the FAR does give us the ability to do a direct award, either in a sole source or a competed status for some of these as a 8A hub zone, a service disabled, or a economically disadvantaged women-owned small business. There you might see it competed just among those socioeconomic groups, or you might see it just awarded on a sole source, and then you'll see a notice of award put out on FDO as opposed to a solicitation asking for a quote or a bid. And the next slide, please.
Okay, good.
So doing business with the federal government, one of the first steps is getting registered in the System for Award Management. You need to have your case code and DUNS number, and that's going to be really the first step that you can be eligible to do business with the government. Each time we award a contract, we have to make a determination of responsibility on there, and if you're not registered, it's very easy to declare you as non-responsible for purposes of getting that contract, because we cannot even do business with you if you aren't registered. So I can't stress that enough, that if you would like to do business with the government, you need to get registered. Then additionally, wide area workflow is how you get paid. And all contracts that the government awards have a wide area workflow clause in them, meaning that it will be done through electronic funds transfer. And if you would like to get paid, you also need to be registered for wide area workflow. One thing that I do see a number of times is a small business gets through all of the hurdles and they get awarded a contract, and then after their first performance period, they want to get paid, and at that point then they learn that they have to register for wide area workflow, and that can delay them being able to get their payment for quite some time, which is a strain on their resources. So,
and I just want to add, there's trainings on wide area workflow. I know the PTACs have worked with DLA on wide area workflow trainings. It's probably through DFAS, but I've been through multiple trainings for that, because I know it's not as intuitive as it probably should be.
No, it's not. And it's very easy to make a mistake. And once the mistakes are made in wide area workflow, many times the remedy is to reject an invoice, and then you would have to submit a new invoice, and at which time then you can restart the clock on when you would be paid again. So if it's a 30-day payment term and the invoice has to be rejected and you have to submit a new one, it could be another 30 days then until you receive payment. So it's very important to be able to work in there and work accurately so that you can be paid as quickly as possible.
And wide area workflow is used by most defense agencies, not just the National Guard.
Correct. Yeah, it's used by the Air Force and the Army, depending on which branch. So yes, it's very important. All right, slide 9 then.
All right, good.
Okay, so this is just kind of reiterating what we talked about on the last couple of slides. First, identifying what type of business you are, registering under those NAICS codes, which is just the classification system for whatever type of work you're doing, and then also registering as the type of business that you're going to be, whether it be service disabled, women-owned, just regular small business, what have you. And then also getting registered in SAM, wide area workflow. And then, as Jill mentioned earlier, there's your link to PTAC office as well if you need help. And in my experience, they've been very helpful for explaining some of these issues. Even more helpful, the contracting officer's name is on every contract, so they're usually the first person that gets called. But my field of view is really limited to the contract formation process and then the administration of it. As far as wide area workflow, beta.sam, and getting registered, I'm just a government employee, so I've never really had to see that aspect of it so much as just make sure that it's been taken care of. So your PTAC is going to be your number one help there because they have that familiarity.
And throughout these webinars, we've had the benefit of a lot of the PTAC counselors in Ohio participating. So they are a great resource, and it's actually the OU PTAC that's hosting all of these. So they've been really active in everything in preparation for the matchmaker and are quick to do follow-up with any questions that people have. All right, I'm done.
All right. And slide 10 then. So here, like we've already mentioned a couple of times, GSA schedules, and these are pre-existing contracts with products that are already in them that the government can purchase at prices that have already been determined to be fair and reasonable. So with those, it's just a streamlined way of doing business with the government because you don't have to go through the long solicitation phase of doing an open market purchase. And here's two links on there of some of these larger GSA contracts.
And those are outside of like Army Chest and the other. There's a lot of different types of schedules that small businesses can consider. And a schedule is just like I like to think of GSA schedule as it just gives businesses the ability to sell to the government through that contract vehicle, but there's multiple. So to get information on different contract vehicles, that's another great session with PTAC.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And yeah, small businesses are all over GSA and GSA Advantage as well, so that we can write orders right to them. Or GSA Advantage also has its own competition tool in there where we can do a request for quotation in there, and then small businesses will compete for government business as well. And a lot of the things that we do is done through, as you've probably heard so far, is done through these larger existing contracts. There is an avenue for these standalone open market commercial buys, but a great, I would say 50-50 of our business is done through existing contracts as opposed to a commercial type of market purchase.
And I would like to add, if anyone is interested in GSA schedules or Army Chest or any of the other multiple award contracts, just do market research first to find out if your target agencies buy off of those schedules on a regular basis, because it's quite a process to get approved on one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those schedules though are great. I mean, you go through that work, but typically most of them you are awarded that contract with a base for 4 years. So then you can hold that schedule, as long as your performance is satisfactory for up to 5 years. And so it is a great avenue if you do go through that early work then. I'm on slide 11 now, and this is just discussing how we award our contracts. And what we try and do is always obtain the best value for the government instead of simply the lowest price. And so what the government will do is look at their price target that they have, as well as some non-cost factors, such as performance schedule or risk to the supplier, to the end user, and weigh those factors as well as past performance before making a purchase. And I give a great example was in response to this COVID-19, where the National Guard was having a large response that required soldiers to be outfitted in personal protective wear. And if everyone remembers, PPE was virtually non-existent at the start of COVID-19. So I can tell you the government was not paying the lowest price for PPE, whether it be gloves or masks or hand sanitizer and the like, both from a policy perspective, because we're dealing with the health, safety, and wellness of our soldiers, and we needed those materials as soon as possible. So that's just an idea of how we can weigh a response to either a quote or a request for a bid to allow us to purchase things that might not be at the lowest price. And that will be laid out in the solicitation of how the government's intending to award that contract. So in reading that solicitation, you'll be alerted of the fact whether it's the lowest price or if it's a trade-off in best value. Okay. So now on slide 12, please.
Okay.
Talking about, what happens, because there's always one person that gets awarded the contract, and there's numerous other people that are not awarded the contract. And the biggest thing that I don't see ever is that you can ask for a debriefing if we were, doing that trade-off process like we just talked about. If you didn't win, you can ask the government, and the government has to provide you with a debriefing of why a firm received the award instead of you. And especially if you look at it and you see that, hey, this was a trade-off process and somebody was awarded the contract and they were a higher price than I was, then certainly ask for a debriefing and look, and the government will provide you with, several things. They can't tell you everything, certainly, such as the ranking or how your quote specifically compared to the winning offer, but they can just give you what's listed here. But it will be very helpful in doing your proposal in the future, just to kind of show you and sharpen your pencil of how the government looks at various aspects of a proposal.
How long do they have to request a debrief from the time the award is announced?
Off the top of my head, post-award debriefing is, off the top of my head, I want to say 5 days.
That's what I think too.
Yeah, I would have to look it up, and I'm sure it's in around this general FAR reference here, actually.
But I can't agree with you more on that. I mean, a lot of times firms don't know that they can do that, and it's really how they can improve over time, because submitting a federal proposal is a big deal that's not that gets better over time the more that companies practice. And one of the ways of practicing and finding out how to improve is to request a debrief.
Right.
And as you mentioned, you have to fall within certain parameters of what they can tell you, but it will give you as a company really good feedback for the future.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so it is. It's actually 3 days
Okay.
after you have received notification that you did not receive the award. You need to request a debriefing within 3 days, and then the contract officer has 5 days after that request to provide the debriefing. So that's just to give everyone an idea there. And one thing too, just as far as for business sake and everything else, one thing that I see a lot is after a firm has not been awarded a contract, and like the example I gave, that maybe their overall price was actually less than how the contract was ultimately awarded. I see a lot of small businesses send off I'm protesting this award decision. And, many times what they are actually asking for is a debriefing, as opposed to a formal protest. So please, in your dealing with the government, just be sure to use that correct nomenclature, because telling a contracting officer that you're protesting the award, as opposed to just asking, hey, can you give me a debriefing and explain why the award went the way that it did, are two entirely different things. And telling someone you're protesting will kind of immediately put everyone on the defense.
Absolutely. Yes, that's great information.
And yes, just something that I see happens on a regular basis. And, if you ask for a debriefing, every contracting officer that I know is more than happy to give that debriefing, have a phone call with you, and just explain what happened. If you say that you're protesting the decision, you will get an entirely different response. Slide 13. Kind of also just going on of what I kind of already covered it, of what cannot be disclosed during that debriefing. Then let's go to slide 14.
Okay, you're good.
Okay, so this is more things of when we're doing business, of just kind of expectations when we're talking to you. Something that pops up a lot is, the first thing we get is, hey, more than happy to provide this. We'll definitely provide this, item for you or service. And then, right after the contract gets awarded is then, oh, we're not going to be able to make that delivery date. We're not going to be able to make something else. And, I understand that everyone out there needs to continue to grow business, or else, they're getting smaller, and you're only as good as the next contract that you get. But at the same point, there is a problem very much where small businesses that are doing a great job sometimes get bogged down and get too much business and have trouble catching up. And it's a difficult position for anyone to be in because the government doesn't want to terminate, for default or anything on one of these small businesses. But at the same time, especially in the instance of this PPE example that I gave earlier, we needed masks and gloves immediately. And, we really weren't entertaining small businesses that indicated, hey, I could provide this PPE equipment to you, and then turn around a couple of days later and say, oh, no, I can't, it's back ordered. The government didn't have time to wait for that. And so there are times where that schedule is very important. And also, doing business with the government is a much more teaming arrangement than I've seen out in the civilian sector. What the government expects is to be treated fairly. The government is required to treat small businesses fairly. And so we just want to see that same fairness reflected when it comes to pricing a change order or, negotiating some type of change to the contract, just because, it's not an opportunity to take advantage of the government. The government also will bend over backwards to help small businesses and will not take advantage of them. So we just expect the same thing in return.
And I will say, just from personal experience with the National Guard Bureau, of just how pro small business, well, especially the Ohio National Guard has been over the years. So I've seen more requirements from the National Guard working with the SBA office than the other federal agencies I work with. Not anything against them, but You really, the National Guard Bureau really walks the walk.
Mhm. Yeah, and I appreciate hearing that. Our small business goals are a big deal to us. Right now, based on the latest numbers that I've seen, it looks like we met all of our goals for last year as well. And, you know, when you say awarding to small businesses, we typically around 80% of our budget and out of our eligible dollars gets awarded to a small business. So, I mean, you really are, small businesses are what we award to as opposed to large.
I've seen that definitely over the years. Yeah.
Okay. So when you're, now we're just going to shift and talk about actually submitting that quote or bid or proposal. So again, reiterating current SAM registration, you know, get it, don't let it expire. And, you know, we'll use that SAM now to search for, you know, any different aspect of service disabled, veteran-owned businesses or women-owned small businesses. And a lot of that is going to be derived through attempting to meet those goals, you know, an 80% execution of small business dollars. And, you know, I think our service disabled percentage is somewhere around 10%. Women-owned dollars goes to almost 50% of small business firms. So, you know, we look at SAM to see how you registered so that we can identify those small businesses in our vicinity and reach out to them to start awarding contracts. One thing as well is your NAICS code. The way we search is usually through a geographic area on a specific NAICS code. So it's very important when you register, if you are going to be providing that type of service or supply, to register for all of the applicable NAICS codes. So, you know, if we need catering services, we will search the catering NAICS code in a 50-mile radius of wherever we need it, or so, you know, or a 60-mile radius of where we need that food. And you can be missed solely by virtue of the fact of not being registered for that NAICS code. Okay, so again, this is things that may not be necessary to be solicited on a large basis, but you know, there will be times that we do our own market research to identify firms that can provide something that we need in that area. Also, it's very important that that registration is accurate. I've seen where you have not, a firm has not been registered as a small business or women-owned small business under a NAICS code because the dollar values change. And you might see something that's been put out for solicitation for a women-owned small business. However, under the NAICS code that is being solicited as, you know, you may not qualify as that small business. So very important to look at the different NAICS to make sure that your registration is accurate and up to date. Okay. And slide 16 then.
Okay, yep.
So here again, talking about solicitations, number one, read that solicitation and answer and submit your solicitation in accordance with, or submit your proposal in accordance with that solicitation. It's very important because the government is only looking at what you submit as well, you know, outside of other resources for past performance and the like. But you need to put your quote and everything in it in that document you submit, and also submit it on time. And this that timeliness is very important, especially because we are so electronically oriented right now. You know, anytime there's a large solicitation or something, there typically is one firm that clicks submit on their computer, if you know, a minute before that bid or quote is due. And the transmittal time of getting it to the contracting officer means that they don't get it until 10, 15 minutes later. At that point, when your quote is received, it is now late. And it's a difficult position to be in when you do get those late quotes or late bids, and it's usually due just to transmittal errors, as well as I've had firms that, you know, we have very long and complicated email addresses in the military, and I've had many firms that have put a dot in the wrong place, or forgotten a letter, and then that bid or quote has come in late, or we just have never received it because there was an error in that email address. So being timely, not waiting till the last minute, and then either sending along a read receipt or a confirm receipt with it is important. And then lastly, again, reading that solicitation of how we're going to award, and not assuming that we're always just going to award based on the lowest price. There are times based on what we need that we will do that trade-off process and look for how past performance meets with technical and price, or if our schedule is just ultimately most important to us. So.
Is there a time that contractors should ask questions or not ask questions?
Yes, yeah. Asking questions is really important. In most solicitations, we will have in there the manner in which a question is supposed to be sent to us, usually through an email. And then what the contracting office does is they roll up all of the questions for that solicitation, and we'll issue amendments out to the solicitation that have a question and answer document. And then that way, everyone who is contemplating bidding on that requirement can view the questions that have already been asked and view the answers, and then also, hopefully it prevents duplicate questions as well. So, and usually there's a cutoff date on there as well, so that we don't get questions 15 minutes before the solicitation ends.
Is it usually through the pre-solicitation that they can ask questions, or can they also ask questions throughout the solicitation process too?
Throughout the solicitation process.
Okay.
And
but
all the way up.
If they ask you a question in general, do you post it to everybody that's like an interested vendor through that frequently?
Yes, we would post it to everyone, so that every interested vendor can look at it and also have the answer, so that everyone's on that equal and open playing field. Because there are going to be many times something that might not be clear. For instance, in construction projects, specifically demo, we've had issues where people are asking, can we grind up the concrete that we take out, that we're ripping out, and then can we use that as fill again? And that can really change a dollar value of the person's quote, because now they don't have to truck all this material off site. So yeah, those questions should be asked and be open to everyone, so that it can be
fair.
Fair to everyone.
Very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, and past performance. So there again, it's just something that the government considers if that's the type of acquisition we're going through. And past performance, even if you don't have it, we'll look at other ways of doing it. If you have experience in the commercial marketplace as opposed to doing business with the government, we'll take those references and that past performance, as well as you're not punished for not having any past performance. You're just simply rated as a neutral at that point, but it's not held against you for not having no existing past performance.
You just got kudos from the audience for a great presentation. So nice job.
Oh, thank you. And then slide 17, please. So again, everyone's available, either by phone or by email. So you can, if you have a question or have questions about solicitations that are currently out there, it can be a good thing. Even asking if we have anything on the horizon, then most buyers can kind of clue you in to what we see in the future. And then it changes on a regular basis. By virtue of our mission, we respond when called. And because of that, we don't always know what our next need is going to be. And it can just happen at a moment's notice. So checking GSA eBuy or the beta.sam, which used to be FBO, looking there, you'll see these new requirements posted all the time.
Now, do you have recommendations for companies if they're approaching you as a buyer? Should they have a capability statement? Are there right questions to ask, wrong questions to ask? Just say they're brand new to government and they're looking into the National Guard Bureau as a possible customer.
Yeah. So I think, yes, having a solid capability statement of what you offer and what you can provide is essential, as well as just understanding the expectations. The National Guard in particular is a little bit of a narrower set. We're in an operations field, basically operations and training. So a lot of what we do is for support of military personnel, some infrastructure, construction of our training facilities, and et cetera. And then also just kind of looking at what the government does. There are certain things that we either provide for in-house or we're precluded from contracting. I think just a little bit of customer education, prior to coming to a government representative, of whether or not what you're offering can even be purchased by the government. For instance, we don't really participate in any of the new medicinal marijuana use or that type of thing.
You don't do that.
No, we don't. So, but you'd be surprised at some of the sales pitches you get. So yeah, I think that's the biggest one, as well as having that capability statement and being able to clearly articulate what you provide, as opposed to kind of an idea of what you would like to do for the government, and just expressing a desire that you would like to get government contracts, because that happens a lot more of, hey, I'm interested in doing government work, and it's like, and then I'll respond back, well, what do you offer? And then they'll say, well, what do you need?
Yeah, exactly. Those are tough. Yeah, that's when you refer them to PTAC. They need to kind of refine their spiel.
Right. So yeah, just having that capability statement and doing business in one area, one or multiple areas where you're really good at it are great. Kind of identifying yourself as just the overarching broker of someone who would like to do business with the government is probably the wrong way to go about doing it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, and slide 18, more things to do, and just kind of reiterate what we've talked about right now. That there are lots of opportunities out there. It's really going to be, we're required to post these opportunities, and everyone cares about their job and their employment, so these requirements do get posted out there. So there is no, kind of a behind the scenes type of working here that goes on. No, the requirements are posted out on beta.sam. So you will see them. We're required to do it. So just check back there often, and you will see some of them. And then slide 19, kind of reiterating those issues again of what not to do. And that's all I have then.
Okay. And the National Guard will be at the virtual matchmaker. So my understanding is the matches should be happening fairly soon. So meaning that the buyers, as they register for the matchmaker, should be matched with suppliers based on NAICS code. So we're
Okay.
actually getting close to the event on the 17th and 18th. So I'm not sure if anyone from the National Guard has registered yet. I need to check and see that, but I know that I've sent it out to Elaine. But just I appreciate the support that the National Guard, the Ohio National Guard, has always provided to small businesses in our area. Does anyone have any questions? I don't see anything in the chat so far. And we'll just go ahead and wait and see if anything comes in. But I appreciate your flexibility for today. You just never.
Yeah, no problem. And I apologize for coming in late there like that. I don't like to show up late, but sorry to keep everyone waiting.
Okay, we did get one question. If your product can fit within several NAICS codes, should you
Hello, can you hear me?
as few as possible? Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get on the Zoom, so I was just going to say, if you could send me the presentation, that would be awesome.
We will have the presentation, if that's okay with you, Joshua, available on the Ohio Business Matchmaker website.
Yes,
How do I get on that?
Okay. And then Sharon, we can email a copy of it too, if you send us your email address. It's the ohiobusinessmatchmaker.com. It's the same site that you go to register for the event. There's a webinar tab there. And under the webinar tab, all of the recordings and copies of the presentation are there.
Okay, thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
This is all new to me, so thank you so much.
Well, and it takes a while, so it's okay if it feels confusing. It probably will for a period of time, but you're in the right spot in terms of.
Thank you. I was in the military, so some of it made some sense to me, but been in sales for a long time, so some of it made sense, but I couldn't for some reason, and I just realized it's our firewall, but I'll get it fixed for the next webinar that I'm signed up for. So thank you very much.
No, absolutely. Yeah, we're just in this new world of online meetings, so I think all of us are kind of going through some growing pains there.
I am, and there was a lot of abbreviations that the military is really good at too, but thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, so this chat question, if your product can fit within several NAICS codes, should you select as many as possible? I ask because I carry a new technology that can really fit into several categories. I've read sources sought that have actually said the NAICS is just a guess, etc. Do you have any, so I think what they're asking is because it's a new technology, there's not a particular NAICS code assigned to that particular product.
Yes, and I would recommend registering for as many that you qualify for under that NAICS code of what you think that it fits under, because there are instances where that product or service will fit under multiple ones. So yeah, absolutely.
And also, if you see a requirement that fits within that new technology and it has a NAICS code that you don't have and you're currently in your SAM profile, you can add it. It's not held against you to have multiple NAICS codes in your SAM profile. It's more like if you have 20 NAICS codes that none of them are related to each other, it kind of gives the impression that you're taking the shotgun approach to government contracting. But the more that you can help the reader of your SAM registration and then your dynamic small business search profile make sense of what your company does, the better. So the short answer is yes. You can put several NAICS codes in, but then make sure in your dynamic small business search profile under that capabilities narrative that you explain what it is that you do, because that's the one section that you have control over in terms of typing in, you know, information about your business.
Mhm.
All right, does anyone else have any questions? And hopefully that answered your question, Mr. Copley. All right. That's all I see right now in the chat. But I certainly appreciate your time today.
Mhm. Okay, well, thank you very much.
And I think then, and I still don't see anything else coming through. Okay, all right, we just got a confirmation from the person that asked the question that it did answer his question. Very good. And I can't remember, we're doing a string of webinars. I was just going to tell our audience what the next webinar is, but I don't know it off the top of my head. Do you remember, Sharon? I know that next week we're just getting down to the wire.
Yeah, the next webinars are Tuesday, November 10. The first one is doing business with the Army Corps of Engineers at 9:30 a.m. And then at 2 o'clock on the 10th, we will be doing a how to do business with the state of Ohio. And then on Thursday, the 12th at 10 a.m., doing business with Prime panel discussion. And then at 2 p.m. on the 12th, Thursday the 12th, we will be doing a webinar on a small business subcontracting panel. And then on Friday the 13th, the webinar is doing business with Boeing at 10 a.m. And at 2 p.m., we are going to have a webinar on teaming and government contracting.
Ooh, full schedule.
Yes.
All right. Well, hopefully those of you that are on the line can join us next week. But I want to say thank you very much for your time today, Joshua. All right, everybody.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Have a good afternoon.